Welcome back, guys. Great to have you.
Thanks
for having us.
So I got to say, I wasn't particularly surprised by the charges brought by Willis in this case, Mike. I was surprised at the 18 others who also got indicted. But what's your take on what she's alleging is criminal behavior in this indictment?
I've read this through this indictment a couple times, and it's loud, it's long, and it's lawless. And the problem with her indictment, the fundamental problem with this indictment is she's essentially she's bringing a mob statute, a RICO statute, that you use to take out the mob, to take out your political enemies. And the fundamental flaw with her entire complaint, and frankly, the same fundamental flaw with Jack Smith's January 6th complaint, is they are not alleging that President Trump incited the riot on January 6th. They're not alleging any force, any violence, any threats of force or violence, and they're not alleging actual fraud. They're not alleging that Donald Trump had Rudy Giuliani tie up the real electors and put them in Rudy's trunk, and then gave these fake electors fake IDs to go in and pretend like they were the real electors. What happened here is what happens in prior elections is you contest elections through the Electoral Count Act of 1887, and you twist arms politically, which is allowed by the First Amendment. And part of that includes putting up an alternate slate of electors in case you prevail legally and politically. Your people are in place if you win those legal and political challenges, so you can win the election. And it might be an ugly process. It's not pretty, but it might be unseemly, but it's not a felony. It's not illegal to contest elections in America. It's only illegal to contest elections in third world Marxist hellholes like Zimbabwe, and now Washington, D.C., and Atlanta, and New York.
Before I bring in Dave, a follow-up for you, Mike. It's true that the so-called fake electors or alternate slates of electors were never, no one showed up in Washington saying, Georgia votes for Donald Trump. No one was fooled. It didn't actually. But she's alleging conspiracy to get these sort of fake electors out there and steal the vote from Georgians, which, by itself would suggest, okay, it doesn't actually have to be completed. It's the act of planning, and then you need at least one overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy, which she has, because she says that they came up with the names and they created the slate. So why do we care as a legal matter that no one was actually fooled?
Well, Megyn and Dave, you both know that as lawyers, that in order to have a conspiracy, you have to be doing something illegal. You have to plan with others to do something illegal. It's not illegal to challenge elections. It's actually permitted by the Electoral Count Act of 1887, and it's permitted by the First Amendment. So you'd have to show that you'd have to show here that President Trump conspired to tie up the real electors and put them in Rudy Giuliani's trunk of his car, versus you conspired to put forward an alternate slate of electors, which you're allowed to do under the Electoral Count Act of 1887.
And we talked about this the last time, Dave, that this was done. It was done by Jack Kennedy, decades ago, saying, I don't think that we've come to the right conclusion in Hawaii. I'm going to submit my own alternate slate of electors, giving me Hawaii's electoral votes because I believe I actually won Hawaii. And he succeeded in doing that. And I guess it was a good thing that he had his, quote, fake slate of electors or alternate slate ready to go. But it didn't turn out that way for Trump. And he didn't prove electoral fraud that would have gotten him the state of Georgia or any other state. But just the mere act of conspiring, conspiring is a scary word, but to Mike's point, it's not, the three of us are conspiring to do a good podcast right now. Like, just getting together and discussing your plan to do something is okay, unless that what you're going to do is illegal. And so this is what we're trying to get to. Why is it illegal just to have an alternate slate of electors? Why is it illegal to say, I think I won? Why is it illegal to say, I think if you go back and check the rolls, you're going to find fraudulent votes? I want you to go back and do that. Why is all that illegal?
Well, first off, it's good to be back with you, Megyn, and with my friend Mike. It is not illegal to have alternate electors, electors that are there in case the actual electors are rejected. In fact, in 2 of the 7 states, they said, we are doing this just in case you don't accept the original electors. And in those 2 states, I think it's Pennsylvania and New Mexico, it is not a crime. But the problem is in the other 5 states, including Georgia and including Michigan, these folks were not the true electors and represented themselves as the true electors. They even went so far in Michigan as to say, we met on this date inside the Capitol. And then they had the seal of Michigan, which was forged. And so that's a crime. It's a crime in Georgia, too. Forgery is a crime. And making false statements to government officials is a crime. And that's where they got them. Now, as far as whether Trump was involved,
just before you leave that point, and then what did they do? So they got together and they said, we're the real electors. And we'd say Donald Trump won. And then what happened? Like, to whom did they say that? How did that become public and notorious? You know, if they just sat in somebody's bedroom and said, yeah, the 3 of us could be like, we're the real electors and we're voting for RFKJ, whatever. What happened after they got together and said, we're the real ones?
They sent the fake document to Washington, D.C. to be counted. And that's the problem. It was given to Mike Pence and he rejected it. But the hope was that he would have 2 slates and then that would give him a reason to send it back to the states. It was all part of a scheme to try to influence Mike Pence to send it back to the states when that would have been improper because, first, there was no election fraud that was documented. And number 2, the electors were not alternate electors, but they're trying to make it seem like they're the real ones. And that's the problem here. And then on top of all that, the comments that made to Mike Pence, that you're too honest and all that stuff, that's at the federal level. Here, Megyn, this is where I think this case is stronger than Jack Smith's case, because when it comes to enforcing election laws, it's really a state function more than a federal function. And that's why you correctly said, and Mike said, that some of the laws that Jack Smith were using may get some pushback in the courts, obstruction of an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the United States. But here at the state level, it's different. They're using forgery. They're using improper influence of an election official, conspiracy to commit election fraud. These are state crimes, much easier to prove at the state level. And then you have RICO, which we can get into also, which is a prosecutor's best friend and a bane to the existence of defense lawyers.
I agree with everything you just said on the back end there. I mean, he's right about all that, Mike, right? It's state elections are normally handled by state law. I mean, it's one of the reasons the Jack Smith indictment on J6 is so weird and off point and such a reach. So yes, they are normally governed by state law, and RICO is a defendant's worst nightmare. And this Fani Willis loves to use RICO, the racketeering law that usually gets a mobster. So you can get the mob boss, and you can get the hitman, and you can get the dime store drop guy. You can get them all under this sort of racketeering and corrupt influence statute. But he's right about the law and that this should be an easier go for her. But she still has to show, I mean, the mob boss, shaking down the 7-Eleven worker to pay you protection money is very clearly a crime. So it does matter, to your point earlier, what is the alleged conspiracy here doing that's unlawful? I see the point on the fake electors. Okay, maybe sending the fake electors there and them representing that they're the real ones, maybe we're closer. But like Trump just on the phone call saying, check the signatures, you're going to find hundreds of thousands of fraudulent votes. How is that? That's Stacey Abrams 2.0.
Well, first I would say that actually, if you look at the Constitution, at the elections clause of the Constitution, the states have, both of you are absolutely right. The states have a lot of leeway to set their own election laws for federal elections unless Congress acts. And Congress acted here with the Electoral Count Act of 1887. So that is the supreme law of the land. That trumps any of these state laws. And so if you look at the process and procedures for certifying an election before Congress on January 6th, that's controlled by the Electoral Count Act of 1887. So I would say that point. And so I actually think that this is a laughable case down in Georgia because it is ignoring that, and it's trying to criminalize the political process. It's trying to politicize criminalize making legal and political challenges under the Electoral Count Act of 1887 by using a novel, I would say bizarre, but to be kind, I'll say a novel legal theory here by Fannie Willis, charging a RICO violation and an organized crime conspiracy to go after your political opponents, the leading presidential candidate, and 18 of his lawyers and advisors, because you don't like their legal theory, right? That's not how it works in America. Up until now, it used to not be a crime to challenge elections. It used to not be a crime to even bring novel, even wacky legal theories.
You know what's weird, Dave, is if you take a look at the nitty-gritty of this thing, you got Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff, who was granted federal immunity to cooperate in the Jack Smith investigation, not indicted in that case, indicted in this case. And as far as I can tell, his alleged crime is he called somebody to say, hey, can you give me the number of some local official in Pennsylvania where Trump was doing similar stuff, trying to contest the vote there. I mean, he was reaching out to somebody for a phone number. How is that a crime? Like, this is nuts. It smacks of overreach.
Well, conspiracy laws are broad. If you engage in an illegal conspiracy, in this case, it's to interfere with election officials. In this case, it's to commit election fraud. Then all you have to be part of the agreement. And then one member of the conspiracy has to commit an overt act. And then you're all done. And racketeering is even broader than that, where you can bring in the boss, in this case, Donald Trump, and you can get him, even if he's not the one who ordered something to happen, even if he's unaware of some of the actions of people who are there for the common enterprise, he could be brought in. And that's why the RICO laws frustrate so many defense lawyers. And on Mark Meadows, I thought it was really interesting that they included him in the indictment because of what you said. He was given immunity, apparently, at the federal level. And I think that's going to create some issues with his prosecution at the state level, unless he was hiding stuff from Jack Smith. And then he's got some real problems. But it shows you the breadth of this indictment, that they included Mark Meadows and they included names in their 19 defendants that we've never even heard before. And
Correct.
So this is different than what Jack Smith did. Jack Smith had a limited, modest indictment. He just went after charges he thought he could prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And he was built for speed. He wants this to be done before the election. I agree with you. I don't think this can be done all at once. And I don't think it can be done before the election because Fannie Willis decided to take a blowtorch to it. And look, it's a powerful case, but I think this is going to take a while.
And Mike, I want to ask you, so you've already gotten, I mentioned Stacey Abrams in my question a minute ago. Stacey Abrams just went back just to look at it for fun. After she lost the 2018 Georgia gubernatorial race, she refused to concede to Brian Kemp, who is the sitting governor of Georgia, and said, we had this little election back in 2018. The following year, she said this. Despite the final tally and the inauguration and the situation we find ourselves in, I do have one very affirmative statement to make. We won. On several occasions, she claimed she had won, and she was proud that she hadn't conceded. She was saying that the Republicans had suppressed the black vote, and that just didn't get indicted. She did not get indicted. And that reminds me of another election denier. I mean, you could go through the list because there are all these memes online showing all the Democrats who have denied elections, in particular Donald Trump's win. Chief among them, Hillary Clinton. How many times did she say he was not a legitimate president, that she actually won the 2016 election? And then you had this exchange last night. Rachel Maddow has her on. And do we have the soundbite, you guys, that I just asked for? Where Rachel Maddow tosses to Hillary. Listen to how she sets it up and to the quick Hillary response. It's unbelievable.
If we no longer believe that our will is effectuated through the system, if bad actors tell us falsely that every election is stolen and that the only way an election is trustworthy is if they come out on top of it, then something, it tells you something not just about that person or that moment. It maybe wounds us as a democracy in a way that is hard to repair.
Well, I think, the truth matters.
So like the lack of self-awareness in that Rachel Maddow question, Mike, right? How could we possibly have these elections where someone's challenging them all the time and questioning truth? My head is gonna explode. It goes to what we're discussing. Hillary Clinton is an election denier. Stacey Abrams is an election denier. Joe Lieberman is an election denier. Al Gore is an election denier. We could go down the list of the candidates who have lost, who have spent months and years saying it's not true, I won. Only Donald Trump gets his behavior and questions criminalized.
Yeah, I would say if there is a God, he will make sure that Joe Biden steps aside for 2024 and the Democrats nominate Hillary Clinton again for their Democrat presidential nominee. She is her statements are just they're just mind-blowing, that she doesn't sit there and say that she sits there and trashes Trump for saying that the election was stolen, when she has maintained this position since 2016. She actually falsely alleged that Trump colluded with the Russians to steal her election, which led to the Mueller probe and 3 years of hell for President Trump and his top aides that hobbled his presidency. It's just so rich that Rachel Maddow would have the biggest election denier of all time,
Yes,
Hillary Clinton, on her show.
Dave, that soundbite ends after Rachel Maddow goes on about, you can't have people denying elections all the time just because they lost. It ends with Hillary Clinton saying, the truth matters. The truth Oh my God. That's what I have to say to her. What are you saying? So many lies, so much dishonesty coming at me. Like, I can't. I'm overwhelmed. This is why people are so angry about this nonsense, Dave. You get it. I know you're a Democrat, you're a prosecutor, but the absurdity, right? That she totally got away with all the same stuff, including scrubbing the server, defying a subpoena. And now we have to listen to her on Rachel Maddow trying to lecture us as she giggles about the truth. I can't.
Well, Megyn, first, it's good to be back. Sorry about that. I think that was Mike somehow pulled the plug on my computer. I don't know how you did that, Mike.
His power.
I'm tired of you beating me up on air, so I pulled the plug.
Well, what was interesting about that interview last night, Megyn and Mike, was that it was scheduled way in advance. It was just a coincidence that she was on the night of the indictment. Look, I understand where you're coming from on this, but keep in mind, Jack Smith is the one who said this. This is not about words, but actions. And so in this case, it's different than Hillary Clinton saying the election was stolen or anything like that. This is about their fake electors. This is about illegally pressuring Ruby Freeman, who's an election worker, for being part of fraud, which led to death threats against her. This is the unlawful accessing of voting machines, breaking into computers. I mean, and then there's the obstruction and the cover-up, the perjury. So this is more than just Democrats saying, hey, we don't like the results of the election. These are actions that are crimes in the state of Georgia.
Mike, the thing with Ruby Freeman, she was alleged by Team Trump, and I think maybe Trump himself, as being a ne'er-do-well when it came to the manipulation of votes. And she's got a defamation lawsuit going right now against Rudy Giuliani, in which he admitted that he said false things. But that's, in my view, how the law handles misstatements about an individual that are defamatory. Like, you don't RICO it and sue 19 or, indict 19 people and try to criminalize it. And while, okay, the fake electors thing is an unusual thing, as I point out, it's been done before, maybe not in this exact way, but it's been done before by presidential candidates. So what are we down to? The false accessing of voter data? The local official opened the door, invited them in, and allowed them access. How is that a crime for those who were invited in and provided the access, who were trying to, by the way, those people were not named Donald Trump. If you go through it piece by piece, there are real defenses to all this stuff, Mike, but that's why Fani Willis is like, let me give you 40 different acts and say they're all, maybe individually they're problematic or maybe not, but if you look at the totality, what you have is a stinky election crime.
Yeah, I mean, it's like she just put together this legal stew and then she just threw it all over the wall and called it her indictment. We have to be precise here on the conspiracy. A conspiracy, everyone has to agree to an unlawful end. what is the unlawful end that they're all agreeing to accomplish here? And that's the problem with this indictment.
To steal the election. That's what Fannie would say.
So, okay, so what specifically is it? What specifically are they agreeing to do? Because I don't think stealing an election is in the Georgia criminal statute. What's the specific crime that they're alleged to have conspired to accomplish? And that is the problem. What did they all agree that they were going to go do that was illegal?
Yeah, no, I mean, we covered it. Like, she's going to say you subverted the voting, the will of the people. That, you know, they cast votes in the same way that Republicans would be outraged if Joe Biden tried this nonsense were he to lose in 2024. The people of Georgia should be outraged that their vote was almost subverted thanks to this scheme that was not backed up by actual proof in court. But let's talk about the logistics of it for a minute, Dave. So there's another case, a big criminal case that's before the chief judge right now in Georgia. Again, this is state court. It was filed in May of 2020, and it's a RICO case. It's a criminal RICO case like this one, filed in May of 2022. And they began picking a jury on January 2nd of this year. So that's 8 months ago. They're still picking a jury. It's 8 months later. And this is a case in which 17 defendants have been named. Very similar on its, face to this one. You got 17 defendants, you got criminal RICO, and they began picking the jury 8 months ago, still haven't even finished that. There's no way this case gets tried in 6 months.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I think that was just aspirational, as they like to say, especially because you have 19 defendants, you have 41 counts. Now, keep in mind that case that she had against the teachers, which was a RICO case, that trial took 8 months. So there's no way they're getting this done in the next 6 months. And I don't think there's a chance they can get this done before the 2024 election. The only chance is if they somehow separate Donald Trump. But, Jack Smith did that on purpose, and he's going to get his trial sooner than later. But she indicted 19 people. So don't expect this to go anytime soon. Now, the thing that she has on her side, though, is time. Unlike Jack Smith, the indictment that she has is pardon proof. She does not have to worry about a future Department of Justice just dumping this case because they have no control over state cases. And the future president cannot pardon anyone here. And the governor of Georgia cannot pardon anyone for these crimes. And so she has the luxury of time on her side, and she's going to need it because this is a complex case that's going to take a while.
This one, to me, Mike, I mean, the Jack Smith stuff does feel like election interference to me. But this one feels more like, I want Donald Trump in jail. He's going to jail, thanks to me, Ms. Willis. I mean, the odds are good, I think, that she will get a conviction in Georgia. I don't know. I guess Georgia's a little bit more purple. It's not like a entirely blue district like Washington, D.C. But I feel like she's got a good chance. And if she does convict him, there's a mandatory 5-year sentence on the RICO count alone. So how do you see Trump's chances here?
I mean, it's obvious you have a Democrat prosecutor. You're going to have a Democrat jury. It's not going to be as bad as D.C. or New York with the Democrat prosecutor, Democrat judge, Democrat jury. But if they can get past the legal challenges of this case, then I think that there's a very good chance that the jury's going to find him guilty and the judge will convict him. The problem is the legal challenges. I think President Trump should file a motion to dismiss this case and bring up two different legal arguments that I think are compelling. Number one is presidential immunity. This is the enforcement of federal election laws. The Electoral Count Act of 1887 is certainly within the outer bounds of his duties as the president of the United States. And if you look at the case law, you can't bring civil cases against a president for exercising his official duties at the outer bounds. So why could you bring criminal cases against the president for exercising his official duties at the outer bounds? And then if it's not within his official capacity, and by the way, if you can on presidential immunity, that's immediately appealable. You can get interlocutory appeal, including all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. Alternatively, you could say if he's acting within his personal capacity, you can say that there's a First Amendment problem here. You can get these charges dismissed on First Amendment grounds.
Which would not be immediately appealable. That would have to wait until post-conviction. What do you make of that, Dave?
Yeah, I don't think that either of those arguments will work in court. But one thing that could is that he's going to try to remove this case to federal court. I think he has a better chance at that. I still don't think it's likely, but he could argue that these are federal issues involving the time when he was president, because he was president when most of this stuff occurred. And so he's going to try to remove it to federal court where there would be no cameras in the courtroom, and he could get a judge that was appointed by him. So I think that's more likely. I have to disagree with my friend Mike that the Supreme Court would uphold presidential immunity or First Amendment rights to overcome this sprawling, sweeping indictment. One thing that Fani Willis is counting on, Megyn, is that she counts on the fact that several of these defendants will flip. And that way it won't be a 19-person trial, but many fewer. Donald Trump does not have the ability to wave pardons around to try to get people to stay on his side. So you have some of these lower level defendants that may want to cut a deal with Fani Willis, and the first one in will be the first one to win.
Can I ask you a question about that? Like, when you say flip, so I get this. I saw The Three Godfathers. I understand what, like, if you flip, you're a rat and you turn and you say, yes, the Godfather orders all the hits. It's all him. But this seems like, what does flipping look like? There's not some mystery that we need to get to the bottom of. Don't we kind of know? We know, like, Trump didn't believe he lost the election. Trump said he didn't lose. We have phone calls and the recordings of them. Like, I don't really understand what flip means or would do in this case.
Well, I also saw all three Godfathers. The first two were outstanding. The third was so disappointing. But that's another show for another time. What flipping means here is, like Mark Meadows, for example. He was in the room when it happens. He could actually talk about Trump's intent, his mindset. And that could go a long way if he takes a stand. Now, Jack Smith apparently has cut a deal with Mark Meadows already, but that's different than state court. And so I am really perplexed and interested to see what is the status of Mark Meadows. I got to admit, I did not expect him to be indicted here because his lawyers, I think, would not have copped to a deal with federal prosecutors, knowing they would also be subject to prosecution at the state level. So this is going to be really interesting. He could be the linchpin to this state case.
Mark Meadows, Mike, needed to get the Hunter Biden lawyers, who are very good at making sure when you get immunity, it's immunity for everything. You will not be left hanging for a second indictment. They made damn good sure of that. Thanks to that good judge in Delaware, no one got away with it. But okay, so I'll ask you this: parting thoughts, Mike, on now that we have four indictments. How do you see this affecting Trump's electoral chances and his likelihood of remaining a free man for the remainder of his life? He's 77 now.
So I've been saying this for the last year. This Democrat lawfare is going to help Trump politically. And we saw all that with Alvin Bragg's indictment of Trump for the non-crime of a businessman settling a nuisance claim. That helped President Trump win the Republican primary. I think Jack Smith's indictment of President Trump for the non-crime of a former president having his presidential records and the office of former president, which is allowed by the Presidential Records Act, put Trump in very close contention with Biden for the general election. I think Jack Smith's second indictment for the non-crime of objecting to a presidential election, which is allowed by the Electoral Count Act of 1887 and the First Amendment, helped Trump win the election. And I actually think Fani Willis's indictment here on similar grounds for January 6th is going to help President Trump win the presidency comfortably by like 2 or 3 percentage points. And it comes down to this. The American people are not going to let Democrat prosecutors and Democrat judges and Democrat juries and Democrat hellholes decide the next president of the United States. They're going to resent that. It's going to backfire. We're already seeing that in the polls.
Okay, wait, a quick question, a follow-up for you, Mike. There's been some talk of, like, where are the Republicans? Why aren't they fighting back, quote unquote? Why isn't the House GOP doing more? Because they do have some nuclear level tools in their arsenal that they have not yet deployed. Do you know what I mean? And do you think that they should deploy them?
I always say that the DC swamp is the only place on the planet where the reptiles lack backbones and that includes House Republicans. And they control the House of Representatives. They control oversight. They have impeachment. They could open an impeachment inquiry on President Biden for his corruption, Merrick Garland and Attorney General Merrick Garland for his cover-up. They have the power of the purse. They should pass two appropriation writers in the next appropriations process, or shut down the damn government, because we don't have a government worth saving if we're going to throw in prison our political enemies. It's the end of the republic. And those appropriation writers, number one, no federal funds may be used for the prosecution of a major presidential candidate on or before November 5th, 2024. That means pause these unprecedented prosecutions. Let the American people decide the election. They could wait till after the election. They waited 30 months to bring these. They can wait till after the election. And number two, any jurisdiction that prosecutes a major presidential candidate on or before November 5th, 2024, loses all federal funds. It's the nuclear option. It's the kill switch. We cannot have this election interference. This is how the Roman Republic fell. This is crossing the Rubicon. When you start prosecuting presidential rivals, that's the end of our country, because I guarantee you this: when Trump is back in the White House and I'm his acting attorney general for my 3-week reign of terror, I promise you I'm going to be indicting President Biden's ass and Hunter Biden's ass and all these Democrats. I will indict them. I will fire people. I will have my Trump pardon, and then I'll come back on Megyn and laugh about it.
Dave, I bet you didn't get that asked on MSNBC.
Definitely not. Well, Megyn, if Mike becomes the acting attorney general, I will send you both postcards from Guantanamo.
No, I will spare you, Dave. I kind of like you. You're the one Democrat who I like. I'll spare you. Yeah, I'll take you off this too.
Thank you.
Dave,
thank you, Mike.
It's been a pleasure. Mike, you as well. Guys, thank you. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.